Good evening, good peoples. It is Monday evening, Tuesday over here in the AM in Asia, Southeast Asia. And what a day. So I had just done my video. Do we get a melt up? Do we get a crash? The good news is we didn't continue down. We got a nice bounce. We got Palantir earnings, which I had said should be really, really, really good, and they were. Now, I actually deep down was hoping they sold off. The last time they were really good, remember, they're priced to perfection. They have a PE of 1200. People that are scared of that, I don't blame them, but they don't understand Palantir. So enough on different stuff, but I just wanted to point that out. That right now is kind of that and the fact that AI and the demand and the earnings are good. Let's see if that run up in the after hours holds. I think it will, but again, I'm happy to go buy PLTW if it doesn't. All right, because I'm so bullish on that sector and that particular stock. All right, so let's jump in here on Nvidia, another goat in its day and back up to new highs. So again, this is my detailed comparison. These are the REX paying funds. I'm going to go through and show you what they paid when I go to the comparative analysis. But I know a lot of you enjoy this. So I'm doing it as an update each week. It's really a lot of work. So what I did today on the Tesla one is I literally just didn't update it. On the detailed comparison, I'm going to tell you what Rex paid. But what I do here is a reminder for anybody that hasn't seen it. I literally walk you through the last 5 trading days because most of these, except for Nvidia, are on a monthly. So I cover the underlying Nvidia. I have Nvidia because these are the kind of the top income funds. And NVII from Rex is giving Roundhill a real run for the top fund. It's back and forth here. Depends on how you look at the data. So on Nvidia, the underlying. So let's jump in there. Nvidia not looking so good. NVII competitive, we'll see when we get to the detailed comparison. Let's see if we can pick anything up. Again, I've double checked these. The black and white indicate the ex-dividend date. So, right, NVII will be on 8.5. I don't know why. Now, some of you say, Bruce, you give me the data and I can't go buy it. Well, that's how Rex rolls it out. So write to Rex and complain about that because they tend to give it as the market's closing and is closed on declaration date. So I get it to you in the night after the market, but I don't believe, the best of my knowledge, it's not available. It certainly isn't available the day before, and I don't unless it's like with an hour to go. But that's kind of where I'm still sleeping. I get up in the morning right as the markets are closing over here, and I go to bed usually a few hours into the market open. All right, so what do we have? Well, this bounce was nice. Look at where I noticed on one of these, um, it went right back to where it was 4 or 5 days ago. But let's go over to Nvidia and see. So Nvidia, what did it do? Because that's the underlying on everybody. Well, on the bounce on 8.4 on Monday, it went up 3.62. Well, how did Granite do? Remember, now somebody corrected what I had said, and they're absolutely right. I was thinking for a while that they were writing on a, they were using double leverage. What they're doing is when they have the underlying funds, which they have on a lot of these popular stocks, they simply write the options on top of their, 2x fund, which doesn't make it a 200% leverage. But the part is they are using a double leverage fund. They're not exactly using Nvidia. But that double fund, most of the double funds that don't pay any income, they are geared to reset daily and they almost have a perfect leverage, right? So that's good and bad. On the way up, it's fantastic. On the way down, it's not so good. So in my opinion, These are trading vehicles. Don't buy it and don't go, I think Nvidia is going to go to the moon. I'm just going to go buy a 2x ETF that doesn't pay any income. You do have some erosion in there because they've got to reset it every day to keep the 2x leverage, and it's just not smart. It's better to try and time the impulse moves. Okay, you don't have to be perfect, but when you get ahead and you get really ahead, just trim some so that you maintain that. All right, enough of that. Let's jump into detail. Up 362. How did NVYY, which has been a stellar payer, guys? There's no question about it. I can't remember which one of these I jumped in from Granite because of, oh, it was COYY. Now, with that great payment comes typically NAV erosion. We'll talk about that when we get into the comparisons. Right now, we're just looking. So I got 2.65. Okay, so that's 75%, two-thirds, a little more. Yeah, two-thirds. So 67, 65%. All right, what did we do over here at REX? Remember, or REX at Roundhill? Remember, they typically use 120% leverage. They can go a little higher, they can go a little lower. Okay, so they got 3.25, much better, right? They didn't get a 3.8 or a 4, but they got 3.25. Well, how did Nvidia do? Well, Nvidia did pretty good for Nvidia. Um, they got 311, right? Now remember, everybody here is weekly payers except for Nvidia. So that's one of the problems I'm beginning to have. I used to didn't care. I used to say, why is everybody gravitating to weekly? Well, when I join the weekly club now, I get that high, that euphoria. But again, guys, I don't need massive income where I'm at. I already have more than enough to sustain anything I'm doing. But it never hurts to make money to redeploy that. But I probably have it varies 75-25, sometimes 80-20 in favor of growth stocks in the commodity super cycle than I do in pure income funds. Now, I'd like to put more in income funds, but the sectors in the areas aren't there yet that I want to be in. So sometimes I create my own on GDX. I create my own synthetic long, right, by buying calls, selling puts to make the price cheaper on GDX, because GDXY is okay, but there's not enough premium unless you do some special things. So that's why that fund's not popular. But if you watch my video, you saw how well it's stacking up against YMAX and Ulti, because that's that stealth, that secret. It's up 55% year to date, the underlying. All right, guys. So 52, what did we do in NVII REX? Well, look at REX. You go, REX, 4.16. That's why it and NVW are challenging each other. Very tight race between the winner here. I'll go into that in the comparison. So how did we do on the down day at 2.33, right, on Friday? Well, we went down 227 in Granite. Okay, went down that. You expect normally 80 to 99% of the down move. Remember, you're winning on some of these weeklies. So what did Nvidia do? There's an example, only 195. Okay. And look at NVW. They're keeping the leverage. They're not going to take that leverage off unless they see massive trend in the market. They're going to keep that on. But here's the thing. The impact that I dislike about YieldMax, and I explain it right here as an example. When people say, well, if they do better in the up market, they're going to do a lot worse in the down market. Here's the problem with that. It's a fallacy in the sense that if they capture it on the way up, that rides with them for the loss on the way down. Here's the problem with the yield max scenario, and I'll explain it to you in more detail. Look at Tesla. So it went from it was bad timing on the launch, so people jumped in, right? So Tesla basically went from around 300 down to 100. Well, that's brutal on an income fund. It's going to go 95%. It would be anybody. And if it was NVDW that was on that, they would take 120% of the down, okay? In fairness. But what happens on the way up? Guess what Yield Max does with Tesla? They get 33% of these big, powerful up moves at best. So they take a 95% loss on the way down and a 33% gain on the way up. And before you go there, somebody's going to say, "But Bruce, they got spreads now." And yeah, but how about all the times they write the spread and it's flat and they collect the income, but the spread cost them money. So now they don't get as much as they did when they wrote calls. So there's very few times that the spread helps. And even when it does, it's generally still negative revenue. It just lessens the massive capping that was happening before. So it's really not the answer. The problem is, if you're bullish on these stocks, there's more upside than there is downside. So here's another way to say it. So if you own something and it's $10, okay? If it goes up for a little bit, 12, 13, okay, Yield Max is only capturing a percentage of that. You're getting more in a roundhill approach. Now, what happens when it goes from $10 to $5? Okay. What do you have to do at $5 to get back to 10? You need a double. You only lost 50%, but now you need a double to get back to where you were. So ugly NAV erosion. That's why Tesla for a year and a half or two was just getting back to even. Tesla had already gone back to 400. So that in a nutshell gives you a different look at what's going on. It's what I love to teach. It's just you have to deep think these and really understand that. It can't be so simple to say, yeah, they're 120 up, they're 120 down. But you're not looking at running, that's why you can backload these and you can run scenarios. And there's certain situations that, slightly up and just winning your weeklies and your synthetic creeps up a little, not a lot. That's a positive environment. Max does pretty good in those. But when it gets really bullish, that's why the growth guys jump on you and say, "Man, I'd rather own the underlying. It's up 120%. Your Max fund's only up 35. Yeah, but I got income." But even when you add your income, you're not back up. Yeah, but I needed income. So I defend it. I look at it. I analyze it. That's why I do what I do here, guys. And it's why I get annoyed that the increasing fanboys of these, hopefully we don't get that from Roundhill. We don't get a bunch of people just promoting Roundhill because they're flying back to the stock exchange and they're giving them little gifts, and all they do is tell you that Misty and Ulti are the way to retire. I get so tired of seeing that, and it misleads a lot of people that are young and just buy into that crap. I'm not saying that there aren't some good funds. I own some multi right now. I don't own Misty anymore. Misty was the GOAT, but there's some issues there. And maybe they get fixed, maybe they don't. I don't know, but there's better opportunities now. All right, enough of my rant, guys. Tesla, I did not update this on purpose. Very time consuming to do all four of these. And if I had to pick one to skip, I'll skip. I'm going to tell you what Rex paid. All right. So let's jump into the MSTR. This one's a popular one, right? Although I think BTC funds are doing better. I'm going to have to see on this update. Okay. So let's jump in here. Who do I have? Well, I got the underlying MSTR. I got Misty, I got IMST, I got MST, the double leverage, and I got MSII. Now, we have an MSTW from Roundhill. Not enough data, guys. I could probably throw a line in here for a comparison, and I will for next week, but when I do my comparisons of funds, it just doesn't have enough data. I'm optimistic because these guys are winners at Roundhill, and Rex is coming on, guys. All right. So What do we have? We have 617 and 877. When I talk about volatility, that is volatility. We're in max volatility environment. I'm happy that the market moved back up. I did fabulous on my gold and precious metals, which again is 80. I have, when I say 80%, it's 80% of the wealth I have deployed. Okay. But I actually keep different funds. One fund is nothing but income fund. So there's days that's up slightly and I'm down 3% on my precious metals. But that's to be expected. If you weren't buying, the platinum miners, when they got PLG, SBSW, ANGPY, these guys that have just soared. I mean, platinum's been up like 60% year to date or something, beating gold, beating silver. I don't know the exact percentage right now. But those are examples of platinum. And then there's a PLTM that Granite has. I believe it's Granite. Yeah. That's just investing in the metal. Fabulous. And those things are going to be better and better and better. And then you add critical minerals into that, and this mining sector will, in the super commodity cycle, will go nuts. Let's stick on MSTR, crypto, and compare them. What they do on, let's take the down day first. 877 down. Okay. What happened here? Why is this percentage not? Why is that showing 0? Oh, so it didn't go up or didn't go down, but we had an ex-dividend date. Okay. So that throws everything out with Misty, right? You gotta you gotta understand that because it had a 12% here on its ex-dividend, and it paid nice. Again, I had people beat me up on it. I had them paying 80 cents. They didn't earn 10 cents. But Yielmex wasn't about. That was the test. Were they going to take a 35% fund out of all their assets under management, right? I mean, the GOAT, the fund, the most talked about, all the YouTube fanboys all promote most of the time, right? Just to get, it's clickbait. They just want the clicks and they want to get paid. And, do they have 35 or 40 years in the market? Have they been burnt by this stuff? Absolutely not, right? So they're just pushing what they're being rewarded to by the company. It's no different than lobbyists, right? That you have on Wall Street and other areas. But it's annoying to me personally because they're not helping you. They're just blurring the data. Okay. They're almost like paid promoters without, the pay is arbitrary. It's not direct payment. But that's what happens. They all run back there. They all get together and then then you see even more videos than you've seen before. I don't blame the companies. If I owned the ETF fund, if I was Tidal, if I was Zega, I'd probably do the same thing, okay? But I feel sorry for the naive investor who can't separate fact from fiction. And they just get promoted that you can actually retire on this thing, which is just BS. Okay. You got to look a lot deeper than that, guys. That's why I try and bring you. All right. I'm still ranting. All right. 617. 8 minus, okay, on the 8, let's skip that. What did we do with IMST? Now, what is IMST Bitwise famous for? They're famous for coming out and paying these massive, one-offs and then dropping. On coin, they just dropped 924. Okay, so that caused them to win the comparison there, and I'll give you that. So the comparisons that I have at the end that are all updated are Nvidia, MST, the underlying Nvidia, the underlying MSTR, and the underlying coin. Okay. So we'll get to all of that. So 592 IMST, nice, captured 560 by Misty. So they did a little better over here. Look at this. This is a dangerous one, but if you get a pure up move, who's going to look fabulous? Who are you going to love? Well, you're going to love MST, all right? You're going to hate them if you look at the volatility and kind of the flat up and down because they're going to hurt you, right? They're going to pay you, but they're going to hurt you. So if you can catch that up cycle, I mean, if people say to me in the comments the other day, Bruce, you seem like you're moving your funds around. You bet I'm moving them around. I have the time and the effort and doing it even in my channel. I'm studying these to the nth degree. I see things. I catch trends. Okay. So if I want to move it for 3 months and somebody else is coming back, I'll move it back. I've been doing it with precious metals many times over the movement because I catch the sector rotation from the large caps to the medium to the explorers to the juniors, you know, from gold to silver to copper to platinum. So it's nothing here that, you know, if you have the time, I get it. You guys all ask me all the time that don't have the time, what is the fun to go buy? Just set it and forget it. Well, set it and forget it for 20 years, I'd say go get you a S&P 500. If you want the income fund, get the income fund. Okay, there's several, and then, you know, I compare those. But if you want to catch a 3-year cycle or you're 60 and you're going to retire in 3 years, I'd say own some precious metals and own Bitcoin. Now, there's a lot of funds for income funds for Bitcoin. There's not a lot of income funds for precious metals because there are on the metals themselves, but that's not where the big money is made. Those moves have happened. There'll still be a triple in gold and probably a 5x in silver from where we are. And that's big in a way, but that's 5 years, 6 years time frame. But the miners will do even better. They'll 2x or 3x those moves. So that's where the money is. But right now, there's not many income funds on the miners. There's GDXY. Doesn't pay a lot of premium. So what do you yield chasers do? You buy it, you get a few yields that aren't that great, and you go yield chasing, right? But 2 or 3 years down the line, when that other fund is down 50%, and you go, that GDXY is, you know, it's almost double since I've owned it. And then what happens as it moves up? It starts paying more because the volatility on the way up is it had an 80% rise and then it fell back 50% of the 80%. Now you're getting volatility. Now the premiums are going up. Exactly what's going to happen. So those are where you skate to, not where the puck's at right now. And you need some of that. You need some of that kind of investing. All right, I've rambled on and haven't told you. So yeah, MST got crushed here, right? Down double. Not quite double, but almost up. So you know, to me, the easiest thing in the world is MST. If I see MSTR really performing and really starting to recover what it used to do and do even better than BTC, and I think it's going to run, I'm going to move my money into MST. Okay. But right now I'm in MSTW, but very little. I have a lot more in Biddy, Baggy, Biddo, YBTC. They're just better funds right now in Bitcoin than they are on top of MSTR. That wasn't the case when Misty was the GOAT and running, but it is today. All right, let's look at the final one at Coin. Remember, I'm going to do the comparison, guys. What do I have over here when you look at it? These are just what the complete payouts. So again, you got a monthly, and you got 2 weeklies. What did we have in the last one? You know, I didn't write it that way, but I think the same thing. Misty's a monthly, IMST's a monthly, and the other 2 are weeklies. And now MSTW is a weekly. So you're going to have 3 weeklies and 2 monthlies. All right, what about dates, guys? Oh, I mentioned that when I first started. All right, look at Coin. 1670. So one of the issues with Coin, when it has that massive move up, you would have wanted to be in COIW. You know, do you want to be in COIW when the move is maybe done? I don't know. I'm still bullish on BTC, which I'm hoping drags Coinbase because it's like the general store in the gold mining environment, right? If Bitcoin is moving, then altcoins, a lot of other, that whole ecosphere. So people are going to have to go in to some of the companies, and Coinbase is certainly one of the good companies out there to get its fair share of the crypto, right? Where people exchange, where people buy. So I'm generally bullish, but I'm really sort of anti-Coney at the time being. Msii and Coii just aren't getting it done. It shows in all the data when I look at it. I hope it comes back. I hope for Yomac's sake they can get back on track. But I think some changes are needed. I really, really do. So 1670, you got 1512, even Coii, right? Who paid you 924. Well, that's kind of expected. What did they do on the upside of 111? Well, they captured that. What do we got over here? We'd expect, let's see what Coii did. Okay, so what did Coney do? Well, Coney went down 1619. That's like 98%, 95. I didn't do the math, but it's 16 and 16. The change is the difference. This one's even more. Again, so REX with its leverage, and that's why it's winning some, also can get hurt. But you don't really have an you don't have an MST equivalent from Defiance that's a pure 200%er. But you've got one that's 120, so it's down 20%. So that gets ugly, right? But let's just see how they compared. All right, guys. You know, sometimes this is fun to do, sometimes not so much. It doesn't feel it today. All right, let's look here because you guys know how I like. And somebody writes me every once in a while and said, why are you making everybody's start date 6/4? Some of those funds didn't start on 6/4. Guys, because you want to look at funds in the exact same market conditions, right? If Bitcoin goes from 120 to 110 and I want to look at a bunch of funds and there's only one fund that covered that period and all the other funds weren't there, then it's not fair. You got to look at similar time period. So what do I do up here? I give you, there's only so many funds that cover Nvidia. So I try and give you 4 funds on Nvidia. And then I give you the underlying, and I give you the dates they started, right? And if some started before, I have to go back to have as many. So you notice I use 219 because that times with when NVW. If I was comparing them, you know, Nvidia has been around a lot longer. Nvidia has been around a couple of years. So you say, well, why don't you put its date? Well, why would I when I want to show it against the underlying, which same thing, that's been around longer than the income fund. So I give you 3 219s, and then I give you 2 newer players here. Okay, a 528 and a 513. But even that doesn't satisfy me, right? Because you're still apples and oranges. So I come down here and I say, well, let's make them all 528. So now I've got 4 funds I can look at. I don't even need to stick the underlying in here. So that's the purpose, and that's why I do it. So you can read the numbers. I don't have to show you all. But if you went just on this alone, which is unfair, right? Because you got people through bearish times, and then you got somebody coming in at 528, and they're kicking butt. And so they're 346 returns. So it's easy to make a high return in a small sample size if you do well. And where is most of that coming from? Most of that's coming from gain or loss. So they came out at 24.98 and they're at 32.58. So in 2 months' time, 2 months and a week, they got a total return of 346%. They've paid a dividend that annualizes out at 38.60. Well, who paid you the most? NVYY, right? I know a lot of you like it, but guys, don't get hung up on yield only. Okay, since 513, the NAV hasn't hurt them. But guess what? What do I know about Nvidia? I know that Nvidia went down in April. It bottomed in April around the 7th or around the 10th with the market, and then it took off and it's gone on to new highs. Gotten volatile lately, but it's pretty much very close to the top right now. So they haven't, NVYY hasn't been hurt. Now, I think they'll end up with a negative NAV, but if they pay, their goal would be to pay 80 or 100% yield annualized and have 20 or 25%. Then it's an excellent fund. But if they get up where they're yielding 70 and they're losing 60, it's not worth it, guys. There'll be better funds. So these guys are beating the underlying right now when you project out because it doesn't have any yield, right? So FYI. Now, how do we stack them? This is close, guys. Well, not so close. But who are the two winners? As they are in most of these funds, okay, is Roundhill and REX. Because you're not winning here. Actually, Nvidia is beating REX, is beating Granite as much as Granite is paying. Look at Granite. They're paying 102.98% since 528. But they're still losing to Nvidia. So I call these pretty even. They're getting there different ways. And there's a case. They're not quite keeping the NAV gain. That's all. Anytime I see a super high yielder, I always worry about NAV erosion. Depends on how they've constructed the fund. Okay. But clearly on the 528 data, REX is getting it done. They're massively gaining, okay, on their underlying NAV. And they're the lowest payer, but so what? So I didn't update these guys. So ignore the Tesla ones, but I did the MicroStrategy ones, and I did, and a note here. And somebody said, Bruce, you don't have MSTW. It's too new, guys. All right. So let's take a look at these. We got MST. And again, this is that scattered dates. I just picked the best I could pick. So with Misty and MSTR, I basically just said, okay, 219. Everybody else, in the case of, Round Hill's late in this one, so they're just, 724. So they're almost 2 weeks in. But it's just not enough versus 2.5 months or 2 months and a week. But I'm going to show them next week. But I'll put them in up here. So what do we have on this? We have 30%. MST, because of that leverage, guys, unless it's a pure sequence where it's moving up 90% of the time, then you're going to outperform an MST. But the minute it has down days, it's not going to perform. So here, IMST, and mainly it's based on their big payout. They got $11. There isn't any, well, Misty's got 7, but it's just massive, right? But give them time. I want to see if they can sustain that. And the good news here, but there again, this isn't the same start dates. So let's go down here and see who wins. Look at this. It changes when I put everybody at 6.4. That 30%, which doesn't look good here, looks pretty good here. Misty's at -5. MST in a more positive movement on Bitcoin and MSTR is 277. So MST is outperforming Misty. They both are losing their butt over here on the NAV, but MST is outpaying them. And what do you get from IMST? Those big payments when they switch off. They have a $7 payment. They had a $2 payment. So it just depends on what rolls in. But REX is getting it done. Now, again, we don't have MSTFW. I think it's going to end up being between MSII and MSTW in the future. Let's see. Can Misty come back? All right. How about the coin funds for the comparison? And by the way, guys, here's the distro and the yield, because I know somebody's going to go, Bruce, what are they? Well, there they are. MSII, not a lot, 43. That yield's low. But what have I been saying? That MSTR funds aren't getting it done, in my opinion. 1971, a little less than 20 cents. So that's about 80 cents a month. Okay. COII, double that, 80% yield, the highest yielder. So that's getting it done with REX. How about the Nvidia one? 46.86, 30 cents. So in between, you got 20 cents, 30 cents, almost 40 cents. And then who's the trailer? Tesla fund, right? 37. So everybody's got to deal with Tesla. I am bullish on Tesla over a 6 months, over 3 year time frame. They just gotta get going. They've had a lot of problems, but they got a lot of opportunity. They got a lot of technology. All right, let's look at these guys when they're compared. Well, actually, so up here, who wins? Well, Coii wins, right? Roundhill, and it's not close at all, because they can do a 5.2 start. Coi's only a 6.4 start. Even though I'm annualizing the gains and everything to try and make it closer, it still is not exactly the same time in the market. So Coii wins this up here. What happens when I bring him to the exact same start date and measure everything there? Now you got a horse race. So only with iCoii, right now I still favor Roundhill, but iCoii came out, guys, and paid $9.24. I don't know any fund that's paid $9. Are they trying to buy market share? If so, they're probably going to get it done. I know you yield chasers are all over it. So, and they had another payment of $4. So I gave them like 95% of that $4 payment because they were only 3 or 4 days out from capturing the whole thing on 6.4. So I do try and prorate, I try and adjust, I try and make everything equal and fair. I don't know that the fanboys do that. Not when they want to get back next year and they want to get their steak dinner or lobster and they want to get taken out and get their little gifts and told how great they are. So that's what you're getting from the lobbyist, right? You're not always getting the truth, guys. So I challenge you. I get some haters too. I get some fanboy lovers. I can tell they don't tell me they're fanboy lovers. They just come on and they write mean and awful things. Well, guys, that doesn't get you anywhere. It just gets you blocked from the channel. So keep on keeping on, and I'll keep on keeping on. All right, I'm building something here. My community is getting strong. You're not going to knock it down. You're not going to abuse us. We're here for a reason. I'm trying to help everybody. All right, guys. So 78.53 on Coii, right? So this is bitwise. So, they're in the race. What about Coney? Coney's like, Misty, you suck. I mean, that's just awful. And you wonder why I don't want to be in those funds. They're not showing me. Why was I angry when they didn't pay $1? And they earned it. But you come around with Misty and you pay $1.18 when it didn't close to earning it. I know why you did it, because that's where everybody's at, and that's where all your paid promoters are. I say paid promoters, I don't mean they're paying them for actually doing their YouTube videos. They're just like when I was a sales guy for a big tech firm. Look, guys, I'm not saying it's not illegal, and nobody's being paid directly, right? But it's the influence. They're influence peddlers, so you want to cozy them up. I did the same thing. We invited our executives, the CIO, the executives in the company, to golf skills challenges when I was with EMC. And we, gave them $500 in a gift bag of all this, golf clothes and shoes. And of course, because they're spending millions and millions of dollars on your equipment, right? So somebody gets rewarded. I get it. So that we're not paying them, but those incentives carry over. I'm just trying to point it out to you guys that don't understand it. That's all. I just refuse to be part of that. So 78.53 minus 6.83. 200, this is what is close. So even with that 924, right now I'm liking Round Hill better. So you can pick either one when you have this. Why? What did Round Hill do with its leverage? And look at these guys. So their dividend return unannualized 53 to 22. Well, when that 9 wears off, why do you think they have NAV? You can't pay $9 and not expect to have some NAV. I'm not saying it's all bad. I like Bitwise. I'm hoping that their MS fund does better, right? IMST. So that's what I got for you guys. Sorry about the rants and everything. I'm just, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to educate you. I'm trying to teach you all the things that I learned. Some of you are very smart. I love some of your comments. You tell me your strategies, and you guys don't really need the help other than it's a point of view. It's just like me. I could say, oh, I know everything. No way. I got a community that tells me every day, hey, Bruce, you forgot about that one. Can you add this one? I can't be there and look at everything, but at least I'm educated on the markets. I understand how they work. You know, I started talking about cycle theory and sector rotation. I had some bozo come in and go, the market goes up, the market goes down. There are cycles. Everybody knows that. It's like, well, that's a brilliant comment. What have you done to help people by saying that, right? I'm trying to at least explain it to them, and most people appreciate it. All right, guys, this is Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. I'm not a financial advisor. Hopefully, you saw REX. They're up and coming, they're awesome. I love them. I love Neos. I love Round Hill. I like Yield Max. I'm not a Yield Max hater at just pointing out when they have something good and pointing out when they have something bad. All right, guys, that's it. Bye for now. Have a good one.